Chris Billam-Smith, good to have you here, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Bradley.
Mate, my pleasure. One thing that really stood out to me, like my first initial observation of you, is how important it is for you to hold yourself with high integrity and with real character. You know, your nickname is the gentleman. Why is it so important for you that you hold yourself in a way in which your, now little boy and more children, family, people to come that are in your life and know you well can actually see you represent yourself in that way on TV?
Um, I think there's like in boxing, there's not a lot of good role models. On a surface level, that's how I feel like there's not a lot of classy people as such in boxing. There's a lot of trash talk, and some more money and stuff, and I get that because in the long term, that will, you know, secure their family for longer and stuff like that. But I've never been money driven. I'd rather be remembered for other things. I think my dad and my mum always instilled that in us to be a good person first, and that's I'd rather be known as that than anything else. I think, and it's kind of that people won't, people always remember how you made them feel, and that's kind of I guess the notion that comes on. I don't want to be treated with disrespect, so I don't want to disrespect others and stuff like that. So I think for me that's always been the case, but it's just been sort of drummed into me as a kid. I think, but mainly by my dad, but my mum as well. Like we've always been, um, you know, manners were always an important thing. My dad's old school kind of gentleman. The way he goes about things, and so yeah, I think that's just always been installed in myself. So it become in boxing, it's almost like a USP. So it's like a unique selling point because it's so rare. But I just wanted to prove you don't have to do all that stuff to be a good fighter, or headlining shows on TV and stuff like that. And thankfully, I've managed to do that.
I guess it's a funny point you make that, being a unique selling feature, I guess it is kind of the counterculture to the normal now, right? Which is crazy to say that, in a world it probably would have existed that, in old school boxing, most guys would have been gentlemen like yourselves.
Mm.
And now in a world where I guess, Conor McGregor's in the UFC and that kind of trash talk has become so prominent, and it seems to be easier to sell a ticket to a show. How do you actually keep your feet on the ground though when your record is 20-2, right? And so when you go on a major winning streak and the wins are adding up and things are looking really positive, do you get promoters who are saying, hey, maybe you should try and sell this a little bit harder? Maybe we'll nudge you in the direction of saying this thing on stage that you don't really want to say, but it'll be great for the socials.
Yeah, I've had promoters say to me on fight week, like, that like show me a message on his phone and say, Chris, what do you think to this? And I look at it and I read it and I'm like, what, you want me to tweet that? And he's like, yeah. I was like, nah, that's not me. Like, this is like on the Thursday of fight week. So at this point, I'm very, I'm starving for a start.
Mm.
The weigh-in's the next day, and I'm in fight mode. Like, I don't care about anything. He's like, yeah, but imagine the likes, and I'm like, I just laughed it off and thought, what is this world we live in? Like,
Mm.
I get it, they're trying to promote, but there's easier ways to promote and better ways to promote. And I'd rather people use me to promote the good side of me and try and change the narrative around boxing, rather than just like they're still going to use the other trash talkers and stuff like that. But if you're trying to sell me and my fight, then use my what makes me unique and all that stuff. So yeah, I've had it, and I'm sure promoters and my bank balance would look a lot healthier as well, and be more happy about it. But I'd rather be authentic and keep the integrity, because can't take money to the grave with you. So yeah, I think it's important to leave any, we all leave a legacy. So any legacy I have, anyone that I do inspire, I want them to, you know, do that for the right reasons, and and just leave a good footprint, and a good story.
Interesting point you made before, that money doesn't necessarily drive you. I would say that I feel very similar in regards to, once like immediate needs of food, shelter, water, those kind of things are covered, and obviously you want to give your family the best life you possibly can, but money certainly isn't the major driving force in my life. Why do you think that is the same for you? What is it about, the allure of money, which seems to be so prevalent in a sport like boxing for prize fighters, that doesn't necessarily grab you the way it does other people?
Mm, I mean, most boxing's a working class sport, right? So most people are from working class backgrounds, and my dad and my mum were definitely working class people, but they had a bit of money when I was a kid. Nothing like, I had a very privileged upbringing in my eyes. It wasn't flash cars or anything like that, but we had every opportunity under the sun to play every sport we wanted to do. Holidays, probably a couple a year, whether that's in the UK or out the UK. We had a massive garden. We had a swinging slides in our garden. We had a football pitch. We had basketball hoop. So I had everything. I had a games console. Like, I had everything I needed as a kid. So I don't think money was ever. It was spoke about certain things, because my dad and my mum didn't like wasting money, but it was never. We weren't hard done by. So I think, as well, I was the youngest, so my mum and dad were a lot better off probably when I came along. My older brothers are 7 and 9 years older than me, so we all five of us lived in a 2-bed flat for the first 3 years of my life, and then we moved down to Bournemouth and had a 4-bed house, which my dad turned into a 5-bed 120-foot garden and stuff like that. So very, very fortunate and privileged upbringing. So I think that is probably why money isn't ever been a driver to me. Not that they've spoiled me with loads of money, but I had every opportunity. And then when I left school, all I wanted to do was, I went to college and stuff, but I never wanted to do a job I didn't like, and I did a few. I was working in retail. I've worked as a kitchen porter, pot washing. I've been a delivery driver. I've done labouring. I've done fitting office furniture. I've done loads of jobs and for money, but I was like, I'd rather have less money and have less than be happier and do something I want to do. And that was always my outlook on life. And that was because my mum and dad, when my mum and dad split up, like, very fortunate to live with my mum, and she wouldn't charge me rent and stuff, so I was able to do that. Probably should have grown up a bit earlier, but yeah, I'm very, very lucky to sort of walk the path I have, and have every opportunity under the sun to try all these different things.
Mate, I was fascinated when I heard you speak about early days in boxing. I was fascinated to hear that, in many regards, you've kind of become this unlikely champion of the sport, in the sense that it didn't exactly flow for you the way that you immediately would envision a champion's run. Is that correct for me to say?
Yeah, I was a good amateur, and I had an okay record, but only probably 75% wins in 43 fights. So not a huge amount, not a hugely impressive record, and never won a national open class championship. I won a novice championship, but got to 2 finals in open class, and which is like the best of the best in the country. But yeah, didn't have like a stellar amateur career or anything like that. Turned pro, and not much was really thought of me. And yeah, I guess I totally get it. Like, it seems unlikely for me, like, when I look back at that version of me and think, how has he become world champion, and had all these amazing nights. But then the more I get to know about sport and top level, and I realise how important the mind is, and everything I've done over the years, it makes total sense, and it's not a surprise. Like, but coming up through that way, then I get it. But the more I learn about, like I said, mindset, psychology, all the little things adding up, then it makes sense why I've done well. Because there's always touches of luck along the way, with anything, I think, but I've maximised myself, almost as much as I can, and so in terms of giving it everything. So I understand why I'm seen as an unlikely world champion, but that's on the surface. But then if you delve into the mind, it makes total sense.
Well, let's pull on that thread. Let's delve into the mind. Like, what is it that you recognise shifted in your mindset from amateurs into pros that's allowed you to have the success that you have?
I'd say, I wouldn't even say it's the shift in mindset. There's a huge amount of grit which has been added by turning professional. I think you can't do well on the pros unless you have grit, because there's going to be so many more low days and everything's harder, and then you have to have the grit to just get through it and keep turning up. But the mindset was always there. I just needed the right team, I think, around me. Like, as an amateur, I train twice a week in my boxing gym, and there's 4 or 5 coaches there, 30 kids or 20 kids that are trying to all get the coach is trying to give them all attention. I only really did a lot of pad work in the last few weeks before a fight. Otherwise, it was minimal sparring and bag work and stuff. But I put all the work in on the bags, and I turn up early, be like first one in, last one out type thing, doing a bit of skipping beforehand, and then I'd be hiring my own S&C coach outside of that gym and stuff. So yeah, I had the work ethic. And then I just needed the right team, which is kind of, what is a massive part of luck, because got a message on Facebook about sparring up at Shane McGuigan's gym, probably back end of 2015. And then, luckily just got this opportunity on Facebook by Shane's right-hand man. I said yes. And then, next thing you know, I was in London sparring George Groves. At the time was... he'd had 3 world title fights unsuccessfully, and then was just joining Shane, and was always my favourite fighter. So it was I think that bit was the luck. But I think what changed was just the team I had. I had the work ethic. I think I had the right mindset, and I just needed the right sort of direction and the right coach. I've got a phenomenal coach in Shane, so that was, I could have easily, if I was with 99% of other coaches, I wouldn't have become world champion. But thanks to Shane, I think that's what helped me get over the line, and the whole family, because they supported me throughout.
I was just going to say that, you mentioned Shane. When I've heard you speak about him in previous interviews, in series on YouTube, it feels to me that you see Shane, his dad, and their whole crew as part of your family now. There's an obvious, real close connection there. What do you think it is about them in particular that's allowed them to gel so well with you, not just as an athlete, but more so as a person?
I don't know. I think Barry's similar to my dad. He has morals and ethics very similar to my dad. He treats people correctly. He knows, in terms of like in conversations, people stop him all the time, have done his whole life since he was a kid, or late teens, and then won a world title at 24, I think. So still very young, and he's just been famous ever since then. And he's still in his 60s now, and people still stop him. 20 million people watched him win his world title on terrestrial television, which is just numbers you do not get anymore. So yeah, I think it's and he still stops and talks to everyone and treats everyone the same and wants them, always shows that side of him. And I think him and my dad are similar in that aspect. I think me and Shane we're both the youngest of our family. He has 3 siblings. Danica sadly passed away, but his 2 older brothers as well. So we're the golden child because we're the youngest, and that's how it's always been. And yeah, and I think so we clicked really well. And then me and Shane also a similar age as well. So I think he's only 2 years older than me, but 1 school year older than me. So yeah, it's I think we just clicked, and like I said, I was just I wanted to be teacher's pet when I joined the gym. I had no background. I was very much the runt of the litter as such. So I needed to impress him as well as I could.
Talk to me about your style of fighting, because it strikes me that I've only been watching you for a little while now, but I really enjoy and appreciate your style. It's quite an entertaining style to watch as a fan. And you seem to be the kind of fighter who, you mentioned grit before, that's written over everything you do in the ring, right? There's, I remember your Zerto fight, and there were some shots where I'm like, oh God, that should rock you, but it didn't. Like, you kept moving forward and responded really well after some of those really tight moments of the fight. Where does that come from? Because, I've heard you speak about Shane and Barry, like, laughing about the fact that you had your first knockdown in sparring, because that was not the CBS that they knew, right?
Yeah.
So like, is this something that's developed out of a change in training, an adaptation of mindset, or was there kind of always that in you and it just needed to be teased out?
Yeah, I think I've always just been very coachable, and my amateur coach was very sort of move your feet, keep everything long range, straight punches, and that's what I did as an amateur. But then Shane sort of molds fighters into their best attributes, and I started figuring things out quite early on about certain positions to be in, and where I felt safe in the ring, like being in close, and like you said, I'm entertaining to watch as a fan. I mean, my family don't like it. They'd much rather me just hit and not get hit, but for me, it's I've that's my strength, and I need to make sure I use that to my advantage. Thankfully, I've got a good chin. You don't want to use your chin as too much, but it gives me the opportunity to get closer to people in potentially vulnerable positions, but still to get my best work off. And that's where I'm most powerful, is up close. So yeah, it's but like I said, as an amateur, I was in and out, and I had 1 stoppage in 43 fights and 31 wins. So then I turned pro and I stopped my first 5. And it was just a mindset thing. It's just that confidence of getting it done in the ring, giving it everything, and then got it done and sparring before my debut. And I thought, okay, I can hurt people now, because I've been coached the right way, both physically and mentally.
I want to ask you, like, obviously as an athlete, as a professional, there is a motivation to be the best you possibly can be, or at least anyone who's going to reach some kind of height in their sport is going to have that drive to fulfill their potential as much as they possibly can. When you suffer a defeat, later on in your career, like the defeat to Zerto, where there's belts at stake and there's the obvious devastation, right, that this isn't the outcome that you wanted. What does it make you feel about your thoughts on the sport, your thoughts on what's really important to you and what you want to achieve? Does it reframe everything, or does it just make you hungrier to go after the same goal?
A bit of both, I think. I think reframed a lot, because you're only thinking about what happens if you win. There's always a conversation with my wife before a fight of like, look, if it doesn't go the way we want it to, then it's okay. We're going to be all right as a family. Well, like, because of, I mean, that fight I was paid well for, so it's not like it was a make or break fight in terms of financially for my family. I was, I was paid well for it, so you feel a security in that, and then it's just about what level can you take the security to. Obviously, I lost that, so yeah, there's definitely a like, okay, well, what do I actually want from life? What do I want from the sport? What are my goals? And it takes time to realize that. I think emotionally, straight away, you can just think, oh, it's a long way back. I've got to win a world title and then try and get back to that position. So I've got to have a couple of fights before I win a world title, before I can get a unification fight. So it can seem like a long road back, and you're thinking emotionally, but then once that sort of emotion dies down and you just take some time off to settle and be there for my family, you then realize, like, what do I want? Like, what do I want out of it? Obviously, I want to do stuff to keep supporting my family, but there needs to be a drive there that there was before, because up to that point, up to that fight, and including that fight, it was selfishly all for me and my own success, because that's what my whole life all I ever wanted to be was the best. And then, so I've just trained up to this point. I've won a world title. Now I get a chance to unify against a real esteemed fighter and get like plenty of, I guess, acclaim for that victory. And then it doesn't happen. It's like, okay, right, I'm gonna have to keep fighting, but money wise, because we want a bigger house, we want this, that, and the other. But where's the motivation? Like, you need a little bit more than that. You can't just be doing it for other people, otherwise you can just go into another mundane job. So there's always motivation there. My competitive nature is still very much lit within me, and even after the last fight, last camp was hard, because I think I was probably still going through that process of finding that fire a little bit, but now it's very much lit. I've had a bit of a break after the last fight, and I haven't had this long out of the gym in a long time with not, thinking about what's next. But I think the break's done me good, and now I'm back training myself, very motivated, doing extras when I'm sort of training myself, like the extra sprints at the end and all that sort of thing, which when I used to train myself in between camps, I probably wouldn't do. So yeah, it's like you asked, it's a bit of reframing there in terms of figuring out what I want and what's good for my family and what's important in life. And obviously family comes first every time, and they are a motivation to keep going, but also my own desire, and like I said, the flame's still lit.
Does the family kind of foolproof or make you a little bit bulletproof, in the sense that, the ego and different things can be stripped away from you when you suffer a tough loss or go through a bit of a challenging reframe, but as long as you got your family, it doesn't really matter so much in the big picture what happens here? Because you mentioned legacy at the top of the show. The legacy with your family is the thing that will last the test of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, everyone, like you said, there's everyone has an ego to some extent, and I think boxing is full of big egos. And although I'm not someone who's a brash and talks like that, I still have a huge ego, and I think that's what you think you need to get to the top. So yeah, that takes a hit. And the worst thing is, we're coming home after the Saturday fight. I remember being on the plane. I'd had like 2 hours sleep, and thought, all I want to do is get home and give my little boy a cuddle. He was like 2.5 at the time. I was like, all I want to do is get home, just give him a cuddle. I walked through the door and he saw my cuts over my eyes. He's like, "No, Daddy, I don't like your ouchies." So I didn't get a hug off him for like 3 or 4 days, and it was absolutely brutal. But it just goes to show that in that moment, all I wanted was that, and that's what's most important, and 100%. And it does help, because, like you said, that's the thing that really matters. When, even if you were to lose all the belts and the history and all of that, then then obviously you've always still got your family, and that's definitely for me now as well, with a growing family soon this year. The most important thing by a long way.
How do you think that, like, post boxing, let's put boxing to the side for a minute. I know you've still got so many great fights and so much success in you. But post boxing, do you see your life dramatically changing?
Mm,
Or is there something in the routine of what you currently experience day
yeah,
to day that you think will ground you?
I'll need something to be competitive about and something physically to go after, whether that's high rocks, which is huge now over here. I don't know what it's like in Oz, but
Pretty big.
yeah, like it's huge. Like if it's something like that, just, and it's not about competing against other people. I don't think. I think for me, it's just bettering myself physically. We're currently doing plans for a gym in the garden and stuff, and sauna, and health for me, like physical well-being is a number one drive for me. All times, even if I do enjoy a bit of chocolate now and again, and whatnot. But like I don't. I'm always looking to physically and mentally like improve, and I just try, and so as long as I've got some sort of routine of trying to improve myself like that, whether that could be, I want to learn piano, for example, I want to learn skills all the time, all I want to do is learn more stuff. I think um I think as long as I've got something, I think I need that for my own sanity and mental state, because outside of camp, if I'm not training, like I'm not nice to be around. If I'm not doing any exercise or haven't done for 5 to 7 days, in a row, then yeah, my wife starts to notice, definitely, and it becomes hard. So I'm much happier even the last week or so where I've had I've been doing little bits here and there, but now I've got a bit more of a structured routine and a workout plan. Like I'm just so much better when I've got that and I'm sticking to it. Then so I'm gonna definitely need to do something physical for when I retire. But also I'm probably gonna go back into some form of education, of maybe learning about a bit more um, about psychology from an actual theory point of view, and learning about that, and then go into that and help other athletes and stuff. I think that'd be something that should really really interest me.
Mate, that's fascinating. I think having those things, I've always kind of thought for me, there's like 5 pillars to a good life. It's health, relationships, constant learning and development. My environment for me is super important as well. And then what's number five? Number five is, I rattled off four there. Number five is, it's gonna escape my mind, but essentially, purpose, like having meaning in life. And I think as long as you have those 5 things, I think you can broadly say that most of those apply to most humans. That if you have those 5 things, I always question whether you could do anything in your life and still feel a great deep sense of meaning and fulfillment. And I think that you probably get pretty close to it. I think
Hmm.
you'd probably get pretty close.
Yeah, that's it. I think absolutely, always need. You can't just have good relationships. You can't just have good career. Like, see it all the time. People, super business people, high end, and their relationships fail, or whatever it is. And I mean, I listened to James Voles, the F1. He's at Williams
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
He's a team principal at Williams, and I listened to his podcast with him, and he seems like a proper on it guy in his career, but he's now divorced, or not with his partner anymore, and they've got a young child. And I was like, most people will see him as successful as a team principal of one of the 10 F1 teams there are. But if your family, you might still have good relationships and you're doing it for the right reasons, but if that side of thing has failed because of the job, then that to me isn't success. It's trying to hold everything together and have a good career and be a good husband, be a good father. And not saying that he's not. I just mean, and help people, and just find that balance. And I think that's always the hardest thing. And I think you most of the time you struggle with the very top elite one percenters or less than one percenters, the superstars that, to find that balance. And I think you're absolutely right with your sort of principles there. I think that's really important.
So let me ask you this then, because you are, and I know you've spoken to being more of a perfectionist early in your career and having to kind of unweave that web and allow yourself to have imperfections in training and improve yourself and not be so particular about getting it right all the time. But when you are wired like that and you're trying to be a champion in your sport, do you have measures in place that allow you to stop, ground yourself and say, hey, I haven't spent enough time with the family this week, or hey, I've been a little bit frustrated at home because training's not going the way that I see it, and like, how do you bring yourself back to a balance and equilibrium at home?
I think it helps that training camps are training camps and there's a space in between my fights. So, for example, my wife, if I'm a bit uptight because of training and whatnot, and I'm not happy and I'm not really that present, she knows it might only have 3 weeks left, which, although not ideal, is still a short period of time. Where it's not like she's got a whole football season left or a whole basketball season left for me to be like that. So I think once I'm in something, I'm in it, which is good in some aspects, but also bad in others. And it's hard to find that balance. Like even like when I'm home, and I'm like switch off from training maybe too much at times. But it's, even though it's still in my head, like I might not do, because I'm just like, maybe little things, like even day-to-day things, like right, I need to take the son to nursery and I want to be present with him in the morning and this, that, and the other. So I'm making sure he's okay and make his breakfast and ask my wife what needs to go in his bag because I'm terrible at that. And then like I get like to drop him off and then I go and do a training session. I get to my training session, I'm like, I haven't drunk any water today. Like I haven't looked after myself because I've been so in that. So then I've been out of the athlete side of it. So finding balance is something I'm still working on. But when I'm in something, I am in it fully, which is a good thing in some aspects. But yeah, it is also difficult.
Yeah, because I remember seeing after your last fight, the press conference where you were quite visibly emotional. The idea of getting home and seeing the family was obviously weighing quite heavy on the mind. And, after a great win, where there's usually, and there was this sense of elation and like pride that you've just achieved what you set out to do. But I can see how important the family is for you, and I really resonate with that. And I think it's nice for the public to see that athletes who we often pedestal as, these kind of machines that are supposed to achieve the things we want them to as spectators, that they actually have full lives, gigantic lives outside of this one very small portion of it, which is their success or, their challenges within a sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an important area, and that's why I've just never really tried to hide any emotion that I do or that I do have.
Let me ask what training looks like at the moment. So you said not fully back in camp, but starting to get the body right. There's obviously mate, you don't walk around as hench as you do without throwing a couple weights around. So, we'll talk about the boxing in a minute, but from a physicality standpoint, are you lifting weights a couple times a week? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I like to mix up my training in between camps, like try out new things. And I've actually gone back to a workout the first ever strength workout that I did. It's called a 5-3-1, and it's just 3 sets of 5 the first week at a certain percentage, 3 sets of 3 the second week, a certain percentage, and then 1 set of 5, 1 set of 3, and then as many reps as you can for the last set. So like 1+ for the third week, and then a deload week. But it's like 4 strength sessions a week, so I just want to get strong for a couple of months and just do sort of tied that in. And then I'll do some running around that as well. So a couple of zone 2s, a couple of sprints, trying to add some more hill sprints back in, which has been been fun but hard. But yeah, it's just trying to mix my sessions up, and I try not to do any sessions that I do when I'm in camp, because otherwise it's just become so boring. I've been doing them for 8 years now, so in the pro gym. So it's been it's been a long slog. So I try and mix it up a bit, and that way I just find I enjoy my training a bit better, and then also I'm more I'm more likely to do the sessions because no one's holding me accountable apart from me. So if they're fun and I enjoy them, it might be playing a bit of paddle, or as well, like try and add those in and try maybe a little kickabout of football and stuff like that. But definitely trying new things and trying new workouts is what I kind of enjoy outside of camp.
From a weight perspective, how careful do you have to be that you're right, mate? How careful do you have to be that you don't blow up a little bit before a camp? And because you're obviously carrying a lot of muscle, I guess you always stay pretty lean, right? But is cruiser at the moment, does that feel like an easy cut for you?
It's always going to be a struggle in terms of everyone has to cut to make the weight. But I think it's comfortable in terms of boxing terms. I still make it fine. I wouldn't want to make it much harder than I do, because then it starts becoming a stress, like an extra stress. But I think in between, I'm not doing loads of hypertrophy work, just a bit of strength stuff, so just to stay strong. And then I don't really put on too much weight, in between camps. It's usually the same, although I haven't weighed myself since my last fight, and it's been I weighed myself actually probably about 4 weeks after, but since then I've been on to America and Italy on some holidays, so that was probably about a month ago. So probably give it a week or so before I jump back on the scales.
Yeah, very fair play. Was there a period early in your career where you make the decision, as a younger man, when you're developing, you're putting on muscle still and you're still maturing, where you make a decision where you kind of want to stop that? Obviously you're in cruiser at the moment, but was there ever a stage where you thought about maybe, light heavy was the position to be, or, maybe we put on a little bit more muscle because I'm a better fighter when I feel stronger? Like, how do you weigh up those decisions?
You have to listen to your body, and as an amateur, I was in between light heavy and cruiser, like my weight category, and then I was like, I couldn't box internationally at that weight as an amateur. So then I had to go up to cruiserweight, basically, it was called heavyweight in the amateurs, but they have a super heavyweight. So I wanted to box internationally, so I went up to that. I then turned professional. I was a bit small for cruiserweight, so just bulked up into it. So kind of it's been quite a natural progression for me. I could never have made light heavy; it would have killed me. I wouldn't have had nowhere near the success I do have now, or I have had at light heavy. It would have broken me. So yeah, I think for me it's been quite natural. Never had to weigh anything up. It was just, that's what my body is type thing, and I just need to maximize what I can be, size and power and conditioning wise for that weight.
Talk to me about what's next. So, I guess this whole weight division has a few people who are sitting at the top of it holding belts at the moment. An Aussie guy, Jai, who, mate, I've got to be honest, mate, you're a gentleman, mate. He's a fucking scary human being. I've seen Jai on a few interviews, mate. There's not much emotion in anything that he's saying. So when you start to think about who's next, who are the obvious names that pop up for you, and who would you prefer to have at this stage of your career to, I guess, make that run moving forward more promising?
I think I'm always a realist, so I look at the lay of the land and the sort of the rumour mill, which is that Jai and Zerdo are likely to have Jai's obviously just boxed, but Zerdo's going to have his fight next week. Or, no, this week. He's on the Jake Paul undercard, which I think is this week. And then they're meant to be fighting later on in the year. So that'd be for 3 of the belts. And then the last belt is Badu Jack, and he's meant to be fighting a guy he boxed last. But we'll see. So ideally would have been Badu Jack for the WBC, and then fight the winner of Zerdo and Jai. That's the ideal route for me. Become world champion again, and then fight for all the belts. So it's it's an exciting time for me, and that's where I'm kind of locked in on at the moment. And now I've just got to sort of get my head down, be ready for any opportunity that comes.
100%. And how long do you like for a camp?
A solid camp of being up there full time, and about 10 weeks of being up there full time, but then at least 4 weeks before that, being up there like 3 days a week. So really ramping it up, kind of 10 weeks. But I'm always I'll do like a pre-camp, and then like a pre-camp, and then camps for 10 weeks. So that's just so I ease into it. I feel that's the best way for me.
What's pre-camp? Is that just dropping some weight, getting discipline back in order?
That's just where I am at the moment, to be honest. Just some sort of program, some sort of structure, few runs, fit enough so I'm not just getting back in the gym and can't hold my hands up for one round or whatever. So I've never been that unfit, thankfully. But yeah, it's that's always kind of the period I'm in now. It's quite a nice period because I'm kind of enjoying my training. There's no fight on the horizon. I don't know when I'm going back to camp. And then the pre-camp would start, and I know when I'm going potential fight day, because your head just switches on to fight mode. Then I'm like, okay, I've got to start doing this. And then be ready to go.
Mate, I'm so excited to see what's next. I'm going to let you make your way to bed. It's very late evening. What time is it there? Probably nearly 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Nearly 10 o'clock. Opposite side of the day here in Oz, mate. I appreciate your time so much. I'm rooting for you. You're a great man. You're a gentleman, as they call you. And, mate, it's nice to see a good human being have success in, an astronomical sport like boxing.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate your time as well. Thanks for having me on.